All right, Post-Classical West, Part 4, Age of Faith. All right, so the Age of Faith, and really what's going to cover is the power of the Roman Catholic Church. So during the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church remained the single most powerful organization in Western Europe. And there's a lot of reason why for this. So the role of faith, people were very religious at that time. They believed the church represented God and held the power to send a person to heaven or hell. So the church really determined whether you went to heaven or hell. The church was the main decider. So most felt united by their common faith, so it kind of kept all of Europe together. So power and wealth, many nobles left land to the church. So what they thought was if they left land to the church, maybe that will get them into heaven when they died. So the church ends up with this just massive amount of land. And back then, land really meant money. So the church's wealth also increased with the tithes, which is a tax. So when you went to church, you paid taxes, or the church would just collect taxes. So the churches became the center of learning. Remember, we talked about a couple of parts back that really the church was the only place where you could read, where people knew how to read and write. So church officials were usually the only people who could read and write. Rulers often relied on church officials. So if I'm a king, I don't know how to read and write, I've got to rely on a church official. So they had a lot of power. All right, and the Pope. So the head of the Catholic Church was the Pope in Rome. Pope was regarded as the successor to Peter, the leader of the apostles after Jesus' death. So Catholics believe the Pope had inherited the role of Peter in running the church. The Pope governed the church with the help of the cardinals, bishops, and other church officials. The church also possessed, so they owned monasteries, abbeys, convents. These are all large buildings, had monks and different things, monks and nuns, and that's where they spent their lives really devoted to prayer. Here's some different popes of the time. So Pope Stephen the Sixth, also called Stephen the Seventh. This pope's short reign is most known for having put on trial the previous pope. So he went back and he put on trial the pope that was before him. Problem with that is the pope was dead. So Stephen ordered the body of the pope to be exhumed, okay, and he dressed the dead pope in his attire and put him on the throne and what is known as the Cavender Snide. Stephen charged the rotting corpse with perjury, coveting the papacy, and breaking other church laws. And during the trial, Pope Stephen screamed at Formosus, which was the pope, the deceased pope, as well as mocked and insulted him. So here's a painting of what happened. All right, two Christian thinkers of the time. So you had St. Augustine, who lived in the time of the fall of Rome. So like your Chinese philosophers, he lived in a time of great turmoil. So in the City of God, Augustine asked why God is letting barbarians destroy the Christian civilization that had been built in Rome. He concludes that there is no earthly city like Rome that can last forever. The only city that is eternal is the City of God. So heaven. So because our understanding is limited, he said we must, no matter what happens, you put faith in God and he will reward us in the afterlife. So this is what's called pretty much blind faith. Then you had St. Thomas Aquinas, and he lived about 800 years after St. Augustine, and his book is called Summa Theologica, and it provided a summary of Christian beliefs. So Aquinas wrote in the time when Muslims and Jewish scholars had just discovered the works of Aristotle. If you remember back to the Greeks believed that you could use reason to find things out, not just faith, like St. Augustine had said. So some Christian scholars felt that pre-Christian thinkers had no value. So anything that happened before the Bible and things like that really had no value. So Aquinas showed that how the works of Aristotle were comparable to what they were teaching. So Aquinas said that God had given man power to reason and to help explain and interpret the world. So we were given reason by God, so reason is a good thing. Therefore, we should trust reason as well as faith. So believe in what St. Augustine said, but also have reason. So Aquinas believed that the existence of natural laws or universal laws, independent of any laws that were passed by a government. So there's these natural laws that everyone has to follow, no matter what a government said. So these laws were based on reason. Our reason tells us what we must do in order to do good and to avoid evil. Aquinas believed that we could use our understanding of the natural laws to evaluate a government's laws. And if a human law conflicted with a natural law, then you don't have to obey it. So if it's an immoral law that a government passes, you don't have to follow that law. Laws of this kind are acts of violence rather than laws. So bad government laws are actually acts of violence rather than laws. So Aquinas believed that citizens even have the right to remove a ruler who continually enacted unjust laws. He felt that his power came from God through the people. So here's a picture of both of them. So the Crusades. So the Crusades is really a holy war against the Muslims. And Christian pilgrims, what they would do is, a lot of them every year would go to Jerusalem. They would visit the sacred areas where you had these different events depicted in the Bible. Jesus, the different places that Jesus went, they would go and they would make a pilgrimage to those areas. The Seljuk Turks come in and they take over the Holy Land. So they take over Jerusalem. And what they did is they tell the Christian pilgrims, you can't come in anymore. So in 1095, Pope Urban II receives a plea from the Byzantine Emperor in Constantinople to help him against this Muslim invasion. Now, even though they're two separate churches, they're still Christians. So Pope Urban is shocked and angered by the possibility that Constantinople would fall to the Muslims. So Urban II called on all Christians in Europe to unite and fight a holy crusade. That should be fight a war to recapture the Holy Land away from the Muslim rulers. So the church promised salvation to those who participate. So what they told them is, if you go and fight, then you're going to go to heaven. So the word crusade means war of the cross. Crusaders fought under the banner of the red cross against a white background. The Crusades brought rulers and nobles from different parts of Europe together in a common cause, and pilgrims, wives, and children, and many of the knights accompanied the Crusader army along this journey. So you had this massive group of people going into the Holy Land. Different parts of Europe, journeyed from different parts of Europe to Constantinople, and then southward down into the Holy Land, into Jerusalem. Many of the participants die of hunger or disease along the way. So several crusades were fought over the next 2 centuries. All right, English political traditions. In the Middle Ages, England is completely different pretty much from everyone else. They developed traditions of liberty and limited self-government that were unique to pretty much any other place in Europe. The reason is because of the Magna Carta. So in 1215, the English nobles, which were called barons at that time, rebelled against the taxes and forced loans being collected by King John. So they got tired of paying taxes to King John. So they were helped, and the church and the people of the towns actually were on the side of the nobles. So John was forced to sign an agreement promising not to take away any free man's property or imprison any free man without following procedures established by laws of the land. The Magna Carta guaranteed all free men the right to a trial by jury, and further forced the king to obtain consent of the Council of Nobles for new taxes. So a lot of different things happened here. The king couldn't take land just because he wanted to. He couldn't just throw someone in jail without some type of trial. And now he has to ask for new taxes. So Parliament actually starts because of this. So what happens is kings needed these nobles to come together to decide if they were going to do taxes or not. And when they came together, after long periods of time, this is what actually starts their government, which starts Parliament. Here is a copy of the Magna Carta. It's a great picture of showing how the king is now pretty much handcuffed by the Magna Carta. And here's King signing it. So in the East, the Byzantine Empire emerged as the center. It merged with a center at Constantinople, and it lasted for 1,000 years. Emperor Justinian brought together Roman laws into a comprehensive legal code. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Western Europe descended into a long period of chaos. Different tribes, Germanic tribes, came in these different waves, and really just completely wiped out all order that you would have found in Europe. So cities fell into decay. Much of the learning in the ancient world was lost, and to protect themselves, Europeans developed a system of what's called feudalism, a political, economic, and social system. And under feudalism, the king gave land to the nobles in return for service. Nobles provided the king with knights. So serfs worked on self-sufficient manners for their noble lords. And during the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church preserved learning, the only ones that could read and write, and emerged as the most powerful institution in Western Europe. The Pope was the head of the Catholic Church. St. Augustine emphasized the role of faith, while St. Thomas Aquinas believed that Christians' teaching were compatible with the exercise of reason, with what Aristotle and the Greeks had said. So Aquinas also believed in natural law. Christians and Muslims fought for control of the Holy Land during the Crusades, and the Crusades entered. The only good thing about the Crusades is that it introduced Europe with all of these great ideas that came in from the Middle East.